You are now listening to The Forefront Radio, where we discuss history, the Bible, the history of the Israelites, science, and other matters. Bring it out. The history of the blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans as it relates to the Bible. Who were you prior to slavery? Who were you prior to colonization? These answers and more can be seen and heard as you listen to The Forefront Radio. Thank you for tuning into the Forefront Radio. I'm your host, Afiel Levi Israel. Now, if you're interested in helping us promote our brand, please feel free to donate to our Cash App. Our Cash App is $Afiel Levi. That's APHIEL LEVI. And that'll go directly to the Forefront Radio so we can produce more incredible shows for you to listen to. Now, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download this free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Thank you. You are now listening to The Forefront Radio, where we discuss history, the Bible, the history of the Israelites, science, and other matters. Bring it out. The history of the blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans as it relates to the Bible. Who were you prior to slavery? Who were you prior to colonization? These answers and more can be seen and heard as you listen to The Forefront Radio.
But he is securely a part of my village at this point. Like it or not, he's in my village. Right? And we all have, we have roles in other people's villages. I am parent in some people's village. I am, a confidant in other villages. I am mentor. And I really do feel like, this relationship that I have is one that has really enriched my life. So thank you for being you.
Oh, thank you. So I'm going to throw out some house rules as I normally do. We typically invite folks to the stage to have this conversation. And of course, I do not want to be the barrier between those who have followed your work, Dr. Joy, and who have benefited greatly from what you've contributed to the world. And so we'll open up the stage in just a bit, for sure. So I will turn off hand raising for now. And once we get to that point where we are ready to bring people up, we will bring people up. With that stated, I want to jump right in. And Dr. Joy, like I said, this is whenever we start talking, wherever it goes, it goes. But I wanted to throw a couple things out there just to get us started. And really, for those who may not be as intimately familiar with your work, I'd love for you to just ground people in the concept of what post-traumatic slave syndrome is and how that came to be.
I'm sure. One of the things that happened for me as I grew up in Los Angeles. I can't believe I'm back in Los Angeles. It's kind of crazy. I'm in Los Angeles right now to do a symposium, Be the Healing Symposium at my high school. I mean, really, where they told me I wasn't college material. Just saying. Anyway, so I think I came about this whole idea in a lot of different ways. One is my lived experience. I started to notice very early in my life, there was something that didn't feel comfortable to me about how when I say we, I'm talking about Black folks, there were things and behaviors that I saw that I didn't understand. Like, when folks would say things like, oh, God, she was a pretty girl. These are Black folks. She's a pretty girl, even though she's dark. Or, okay,
Mm.
he was fine. Boy, that was fine. He was fine. He was light-skinned, new word,
Oh my.
light-skinned and had good hair, right? And these were things that I grew up with. I grew up hearing those kind of statements from people that look like me. And and again, it felt wrong, right? And in my family, it was considered wrong, and I was trying to understand, I think very early on, why that was happening, and why when my friends got mad at me and we had a fight, that and God bless us, we didn't have it go viral. We didn't have that problem. You just had to fight and it was done. But you had a fight, but before they fight you, they would call you out your name, and the first thing they would call you is black. You black, fill in the blank. You black. And again, what we're the intention is here is that somehow by calling you black, it will add to your injury. And so for me, again, I'm going, why you beat me up with my blackness? You know what I mean? Black becomes the assault that you harm me or seek to harm me with. And those were the kinds of things that early on, again, just as a child and a youth growing up, in and around South Central, it was part of the survival, making it through the day without getting jumped or whatever was going on. But added to that was this sense of this kind of an injury that I couldn't name. I couldn't name it. I knew it didn't make sense. And even when people did it, you could see in their faces that it harmed them.
Mm.
It was such an amazing thing when I look back on it, and I now have a different set of eyes. I saw that it was pain all over the place. And so as I move forward, I started to look at and I had read in a number of places this whole idea of the injury, slow healing wounds in certain places. And then I said, I'm going to take it upon myself to find out what those wounds are. Because you see, nowhere, I have 4 degrees, as you've heard. None of those degrees taught me about me. None of them. Okay. It was, as I was seeking to understand, it did not come from the folks that were trying to tell me who and how to be. And so I'm trying to find out things about what the lived experience is of people that look like me, and why and how. And so inevitably I started reading, I started interviewing folks, elders. I started reading slave narratives. I had to go all the way back as far as I could to try to hear them tell their stories based on their own narratives. I wanted to understand that, and I learned some things. So post-traumatic was born from something that's, first of all, it's not new. Everybody thought my book was, God, it's provocative. It's not provocative. We've looked at multi-generational trauma with other groups. We've looked at our indigenous brothers and sisters, and the impact of colonialism, the unhealed wounds, the grief that still occurs, putting them right square at the top of the suicide rate in this country. They've held that position for at least last 30 years that I've known. So we've looked at folks. We've looked at Aboriginal folks in Australia, and I often, when I'm speaking, and I know that it probably maybe throws some people off. I said, why is it when people heard post-traumatic slave syndrome, they got all in their feelings. Well, how? First of all, I wasn't there, and you people enslaved each other. And I mean, you get all this pushback, and get over it.
Not you people.
Oh, yes, you people,
Oh,
get over it. Y'all need to get over it. I said, now, it's interesting that, when I say slavery, folks get all twisted, but they don't get twisted when I say Holocaust. Help me understand that. Right. And so again, there are folks that this is not new. It's just new that I decided to not ask anybody's permission to look at me. It's new that I didn't, somehow seek some support around wanting to understand greater my people that look like me. But it was interesting that the very first response to it was, oh my God, this is so out of the ordinary. No, it's not. It's only out of the ordinary because, we don't look at Black folks. We don't get to do that deep dive as if, 300 plus years of enslavement didn't produce injury. But it was under that kind of looking at behaviors, attitudes, things that we would do and say, and then taking and superimposing a history that few of us, and I say few of us, Black folks, fully understand. And so I think that's intentional, by the way. I think the institutions, it's counterintuitive for them to share the legacy of what has occurred as it relates to American chattel slavery. So again, it was born from, one, my lived experience from very young, and from my engagement and understanding and deep dive into the history of Blackness and anti-Blackness. So that's kind of how it started. And again, I looked at symptomology. I looked at, of course, from a clinical vantage point, let me just say that post-traumatic slave syndrome is not a clinical diagnosis. Let me be very clear about that. It is not a clinical diagnosis. A clinical diagnosis like post-traumatic stress disorder.
Let me pause you real quick on that, because I know that you talked about that before, and I feel like I know why, right? But how have you navigated the fact that all of the symptoms are there, but yet they won't give it the designation? What's that about?
First of all, let me be very, very clear. I don't want them to give it the designation.
Okay.
Let me explain. Because what that does, it suggests, now again, let's just look at something we probably all know, post-traumatic stress disorder. It presents itself with certain symptoms, right? Exaggerated startle response, difficulty falling or staying asleep, mood disorders, all kind of stuff. There's a whole list of them. You can look at them. You don't need to have all of them. Just have a few of them to get the diagnosis. And then what they do is they start looking at, how they can help you. Is it showing depressive signs? They give you antidepressants. They may, give you some talk therapy where you go and talk to somebody twice a week who speaks to you softly, with the intent, stay with me, of moving you beyond this point in your life to the point where you're more functional, you're feeling like you're healing, you're able to actually enjoy your life on a certain level. Certain things the mental health community is trying to do. Post-traumatic slave syndrome isn't in there because you have to understand that in order for healing to occur, there has to be social justice. And when you pathologize it, you say, okay, so this is a pathology. Now, let me just tell you the other thing that happens. Oh, it's a pathology that they can be treated for? Okay, well, let me go on and get it, put in the DSM, Diagnostic Statistical Manual, Mental Disorders. Let me have them pay me to heal them from this thing called post-traumatic slave syndrome. Are you following what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Absolutely not. And it can't be fixed that way, because that means that you can just give me some medication, sit me in a room, talk to me softly, a couple of times a week, and everything's going to be fine. No, it's not. Right. You see, because part of the injury has been that historical trauma, economic trauma, all of those things that bring us to 2022. And, the reason why the man had his knee on the neck of George Floyd, you see, all of those things can't get addressed in a room. And so it does not ever suggest that, and it also suggests that, somehow Black people are all sick. No, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about injury here. And that injury was sustained on a number of levels: mentally, emotionally, physically, economically, socially, medically. You just, the list goes on and on. Read the book. But the point is that it was never, ever intended to be that. And there are people that have tried. Now, racism, they've also tried to put in the DSM, all of these different things. But you got to also remember that part of what Europeans did was they rationalized their horrors. They rationalized it, they monetized it, and then they exported and imported it. right? That's what they do. And so what would happen if we could, first of all, the problem then becomes the people and not the systems and not the structures that produce the injury. So that's for all of those reasons, it doesn't belong in the DSM. It is not a diagnosis in that way.
Got it. Okay. So we're only 20 minutes in. I love it. I have so much to say there. So there's a saying that you've used, and I swear it's probably one of the strongest statements on its own. I'm just gonna say it real quick, Sister Joy. It's the secrets that make us sick. And it's one of these things that keeps resonating in my head every time I'm engaged with an executive who is for or supportive of DEI, right? But the secrets are what make us sick. And if we're truly engaged in this change work, right, and you've done a lot of work in terms of the pathology of the illness, there's still an unwillingness, I think, to dig into that root cause in a corporate setting. But the secrets make us sick. I want you to address that. Talk to me about that.
Sure. I think, first of all, just when I was doing clinical practice and, was working with individuals and families, inevitably, I had a very interesting case. And of course, I worked in the hood, set up an office in the hood. They didn't have anybody to supervise, the Black MSW students. So I literally put myself in the middle of the community to say I will supervise them because we need them, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm in the community and I'm kind of supervising the cases that they're dealing with, and had a few of my own. I had to be in practice myself in order to be supervising them, and so I have an individual that comes in. It's a family, a Black family, very wealthy family. The presenting problem was a young girl. And the young girl was 14. She was acting out, not going to school, really acting out. And so the father is bringing this to me before I meet anyone in the family. He says, look, I'm wondering if you'd be willing to take, this on. My daughter is, she's kind of acting out, creating problems. And I said, yeah. I said, but I generally speaking, I don't just deal with the child. I deal with the family, because the child, there's a root cause somewhere, and it's not just the child alone. Well, I don't think that'll be necessary. He says, we're fine. It's just that she's acting out. I said, okay, well, I will start, working with her. And as I started to talk and work with this young girl, it became very clear that she didn't know her father at all. She didn't know. As I began to talk to her, she said, I said, well, tell me a little bit about, your relationship with your dad. She goes, I don't really know my dad. I said, what do you mean? She goes, for example, I've never met anyone in his family. I said, well, that's pretty deep. Yeah. He refuses to engage his family, moved them from, being rich to being wealthy, doing all the bells and whistles. The girl had her own car, her own room, her own everything. But she was miserable. And I'm going, so you don't tell me about your mom. She goes, well, I'm really close. I'm close with my mom, but, she travels. So mom travels for a living. And I'm going, okay, well, who else? And he says, well, my grandmother lives here and all in the house, but they're all like in separate spaces. I'm going, oh, okay. So I said, I'd like to actually meet with everyone that I can that would be willing to meet with me. So I meet with the mother, right? And the mother is very, really a wonderful person, well-educated, but has decided to take on this job that allows her to travel. And she says, we never wanted to move. We never needed a bigger house. We never needed, an exclusive neighborhood. This is what the mother is saying to me, right? So now, I got to talk to dad. So I called him. I said, look, I think, I've talked to your daughter and I've talked to your wife, and really, all roads lead to you. And I said, I'd like you to come in. And he was beside himself because it was like, oh, well, I don't have a lot of time. I said, okay, well, I promise I won't take up too much of your time. He comes to the office and he starts to tell me about, the problems his daughter's having and all the things he's done for her. And it's, she's just spoiled. And I'm listening to him. I said, tell me a little bit about you. He goes, oh, this is not about me. I said, no, I'm really trying to get a sense of who you are because your daughter didn't seem to know a lot about you.
Mm.
Well, she, there's no need to know about, my family, my family is, that's just, they were dysfunctional and I don't deal with them. I said, oh, okay. So what made them dysfunctional? Well, that's not something I, really feel like I need to talk about. I said, okay, well, let's talk about your wife and let's talk about, your relationship with her, the three of you, your wife and your daughter. Well, she travels a lot. And, I think she drinks a little too much. Oh, really? So how does that look? When did you notice that? Well, she'll come home and she'll have a glass of wine. Oh, so you and her, she goes, no, by herself in her room. And she says, so I think she drinks just a little too much. I said, just a little too much? I said, perhaps, I said, maybe, when you say a little too much, I need you to unpack what that means because, I know a little too much might mean a whole lot more than that. And he just went off. He goes, yeah, I know what it is. I know what it's like to pick up my father drunk in the street. I know I stopped talking completely. And for the next 15 minutes, he went on and he turned around and he looked at me. Because you see, that was the secret.
Mm.
And so when I looked at him, tears are streaming down his face. And he says, I guess there was a reason, there was a need for me to be here today. I said, yeah, I think so. Right. Long story short,
Wow.
he took his kids, sold a great big fabulous house and went back to where they were happy. But
Wow.
the point was, and a good therapist, actually a good friend, if you've ever had a friend come to you and that there's something, they give you the presenting problem, but then
Sure.
you notice something else, right?
There's something underneath that.
You know that, and that's essentially what I mean. And when we start talking about the secrets, and I could start a phrase right now, and everybody Black on would know exactly how to answer it. You never air your
Dirty laundry.
dirty laundry. Right. And there's certain secrets, even members of the family that keep the secrets, and sometimes those members are children. But it is the secrets, and that's just through practice that I know it's the secrets that make us sick. And if we expand that on a broader level and we start looking at generational, intergenerational trauma, then it's those secrets we have to release so that we can be well.
No, this is powerful, and it's interesting. So the intergenerational trauma, and these are things that we've talked about in plantation theory for sure, about relating it to our relationship to work, right? To the concept of work, and rooting our epigenetic responses and coded behaviors based on why we were brought here as enslaved people, right? Which was to work harder than anyone has ever worked for the benefit and the economy that was constructed around it, and how that plays out even still today, right? And we have conversations a lot about this working twice as hard and for half the recognition or half the pay in some cases. And so thinking about that, right? We talk a lot about connecting the dots between history and modern day lived experience for Black folks. And one of the things that we talk about is the traumas associated to working in corporate spaces. And you have an intimate understanding of how the Black relationship to work is rooted in trauma. There's a concept that you brought up, not that you created, but you certainly brought up in one of your talks about appropriate adaptation when living in a hostile environment. And I'd love to get, for those who are listening who are Black professionals and, whether they're in HR, whether they're in academia or just professionals in corporate America and academia. What are some of the ways that appropriate adaptation sort of manifests itself?
In my book, I talk about it, and I've written a couple of journal articles and book chapters that speak to this, but I'm going to give some that probably people have seen, experienced, and just, didn't question it. It becomes, what I propose is that we can ill afford to swallow whole what we call cultural, right? We can ill afford to swallow it whole because there's poison in the cookies. And what I mean by that is that what we call cultural, like people say, that's just how they are. People say, "Oh, that's just how they are. That's their culture."
Right.
So how do you tease the poison from the cookies? Because see, that's my job. My job was to sit there and go, no, that's not cultural. That's adaptive. That's survival. And survival hasn't always been pretty, right? We survive in the best way that we can, given our circumstances. And so I give people examples of contemporary behavior that we see on a regular basis. For example, this is interesting because I took this all the way back when I went back to Ghana. I'm getting ready to go to Ghana again, but when I went to Ghana, I was really very deliberate and intentional, because this is after I've written a book. And there's this experience that I had, and I used to have, and probably a lot of you did. When I was in any kind of building, office building, business space with my mother or my father, and I was young, I was 5 years old, 6.
Okay.
I was right next to my parents. Mm-hmm. There was no floating around. There was, you were right there. And I remember going into a bank, and this is, I'm an adult now, raising my own children. And again, I understand the importance of human development. I taught it for, 20 years. So, human development in the social environment, recognizing, developmental stages from birth to death. So I am in a bank, right? I'm in a bank, and I'm watching this behavior. And I will often ask, especially when I work in the community and I work with parents, I say, if you were in the bank and you were a child between anywhere from 4 to 6, and your mother or father, or whoever the guardian was for you, you were there with them, where were you in proximity of that adult? And they would say, "Oh, I'm right there in the grocery store, holding on." Sometimes they're holding on to the leg. Everybody moves all at once, right? And if the child should move, I don't know what to snap. The little finger would snap. Get yourself over here. Get over here, right? The moment the child will stray. Now, we in a bank, you got the little 4 to 6-year-olds, and every Black child is glued to their parent. Meanwhile, little Cindy and Timmy, little white Cindy and Timmy, they rolling around. They rolling on the ropes, rocking up on you, saying, "That's a nice sweater. What's your name?" Right? They just rolling in the same bank that the Black children can't move. Now, what happens is, now I'm going to give you some history there, and I don't have to give you much to help you understand why that parent is saying don't move. But I want you to see how deeply entrenched it is in our socialization, in our adaptation. So it is a part of human development. Part of human development is for a child to reach a point where they have a certain level of secure attachment, so much so that they are able to explore independently within their environment. In other words, they feel a certain level of autonomy that comes with this security. So what happens is the natural task of development is in all of us. I want to go look at that over there. I want to go touch that. I want to go look closer at this. That's part of the human experience. I don't care who you are. So what happens to the child? Stay with me. Now we're going to get to the parent, why the parents say you can't move. So the child then gets, let's say that there's a little, now you get to the counter, right? You get to the counter, you're getting ready to talk to the teller. Now, the counter is actually, the children are lower than the counter. And the parent can't see them because they're facing the counter. So the kids are trying to escape, which is a normal thing to do. So the child is under there. They go, "Mama can't see me, Daddy can't see me. I'm there. I'm out. I'm out." But in the back of the line, where the mama, the same line, There's another black person, male or female, don't know the mother, don't know the children, but knows the death stare. Right. So that black parent steps out, looks at the children getting ready to escape, and the little kids go, oh man, right? And they roll back. So now you have a larger social control because you see that person, that black person, has the other black person's back. I'm watching out for your children because you aren't seeing this. But the question becomes, why can't they move? But everyone has bought into this idea. Now, understanding that there's something that happens to children. You know, we have these developmental stages. So now you have this 4 to 6 year old children that are clinging to their parents, unable to move. And you have white children rolling down the aisles, you know, and what the black child is non-verbally being taught here is it's their world. It's not mine. I'll get in trouble. And then the white children are looking and going, huh, they can't move. Something must be wrong with them. And so what we have to recognize is what gets internalized. Because you see, it's normal to want to do exactly what the white children are doing. But this child is now feeling anger, shame, and guilt. And they're only 4 years old. And so what happens with that is you need look no further than Emmett Till to understand, right? Because it has cost our children their lives. If they bump, look at the young kid that bumped, his backpack touched her. He is 9 years old and she accused him of sexually trying to do something to her. And they showed it on the camera that his backpack hit her. So we have been conditioned and socialized that we don't get the same rights everyone else does. We have to protect. And so what did I do when I raised my children? I said, I need you to be where I can see you. And they would go with me. My grandkids would go with me in the bank or wherever I was. They go, hey, Ema, they would wave, right? Because they're being children. Now, just to kind of show you how deeply ingrained that is. So let's, on one occasion, I'm going to a loan officer. I'm speaking to a loan officer, and I have my grandson with me, and he's got about 3.5, 4 years old, and he's with me this day. And he's just sitting, sitting on my lap, right? And he's just very quiet. And another thing that you will hear happens. This is an elder black woman that I'm talking to. So I want you to remember that scene. I am sitting, my grandson is quietly sitting on my lap, right? Yep. Now, let me give you one more, then I'll pull it all together for you. I just tend to do it this way. I'm sorry.
I'm here for it. So yeah, we're good.
So one of the well-known things that, I don't know if you all know Adelaide Sanford, she was the Vice Chancellor of Education in New York State, and she's amazing. Adelaide's still alive. She was old when I met her. Okay, so I don't, she just go outlive us all. She got to be in her 90s now.
Okay.
Anyway, so Adelaide, I'm on a radio show talking about post-traumatic, exact same thing we're doing right here. I'm talking about post-traumatic. And one of the questions is, what does it look like? And I give them this example. I said, there's a black mother, and this is the one everybody knows, a black mother and a white mother. And a black mother and a white mother, this is contemporary, say 2022. Black mother and white mother both have sons, or it could be daughters. It's not gender specific, but they both have sons, and the sons know each other. As a matter of fact, they go to school. Maybe they're at a school meeting, and they're sitting next to each other with their sons on either side of them. The black mother, who knows the white mother, knows her son, leans over and says, I just wanted to mention to you, I noticed your son is really doing really well. And the white mother perks up and goes, thank you so much. He really is, he's in the talented and gifted program. That's called TAG. And he also, won the science fair last week. His uncle's an astronaut. She's just going on and bubbling with enthusiasm about her son. And so she sits back feeling, warm and fuzzy. And as she sits back, she realizes that the black mother's son is actually excelling her son. So she leans back forward and she says to the black mother, well, wait a minute, you're talking about my son. Your son's the one that's really coming along. Black mother goes, girl, get out of here. You should have seen that boy yesterday. Lord have mercy. He works my nerves. Oh, he's a mess. Ooh, he's a handful. You think so, but yeah, right? So the white response to that, white people in general, they're like, no wonder they're just so negative. So I'm going to bring us all the way back home. I'm going to bring us to the secret. So there is a secret that happens. And the secret here that all Black people know at a certain point is that even though that Black mother is going, girl, get out of here. That boy's a handful. She's proud, as proud or even more proud than that white mother. Even though she's saying things that are denigrating. Stay with me. There's a secret that even though she's saying that, she's proud. Now, let's find the etiology. Let's look at the root cause analysis of this. I told you, I started off by telling you I read a lot of slave narratives, thousands of them actually.
Right.
And when I read these slave narratives, there was something that showed up. So I'm on this radio show and I'm telling this exact same story, and Adelaide calls in, right? She calls in because she's going to be one of the people that's going to be talking to me, right? And I'm like, I was intimidated. But I want you to look at that story so we can have context. And I want you to roll it back now, 300 years. It's a Black mother, and there's a white mother. The white mother is a slave owner, and or there may be a male slave owner as well. And it's not uncommon that, you know, this enslaved mother has children, and they too are enslaved. And let's say she's working in the big house, or she's working in the field. Doesn't matter. Very often, the children would play nearby. Black and white children, Black, white children playing together. And on this particular occasion, she's working in the fields, and her son is there, and a white slave owner comes through and says, that's your boy over there. That your boy? That boy's sure coming along. He is sure coming along. And what is that mother going to say? She's going to say, oh, no, sir. He's stupid. He's shiftless. He can't work. And if it's my daughter, I'm going to tell you she can't do nothing. She's lazy, you know. She dirty because I don't want you to breed her. And if it's my son, I don't want you to sell him away. So I denigrate them to protect them. That is appropriate adaptation when you live in a hostile environment. It was agency then, but not now. So now let's roll it back to 2022. You got Trey sitting next to his mother. You got Timmy sitting next to his. And Trey looks at his mother and he thinks, how come you can't be proud of me? How come you can't be proud of me like she's proud of her son? Because he doesn't know the secret yet. And by the time Trey learns the secret, he's been injured by it. Post-traumatic slave syndrome.
Ooh.
Secrets make you sick.
Man. Look, so no matter how much I hear that, it never ceases to just knock you over the head. And I remember we were talking one day, and I remember you telling me about the social hierarchy. And I remember you telling the racial hierarchy and how, and you, you made me take out a piece of paper and draw this up. You remember this? You said there's white man, white woman, Black man, Black woman. Remember this, right? And you proceeded to tell me how the flow of racism and sexism goes down the hierarchy. But where does it land? Where does it end up?
All right.
Take them through it.
So first of all, yeah, and I can't claim the actual chart itself. I actually added to the chart once I saw it. And the brothers that did this were, what is the name of it? This is a group of Black men. It'll come to me. This is old brain. Group of Black men that really have created an organization that's been going on for men to raise up and to work with women against violence against women. So it's a really powerful group, and that's where the actual chart came from. But by the way, I just wanted to tell you to end that story with Adelaide.
Yeah.
Adelaide called in to tell me that she sat at her grandmother's feet, who had been enslaved as a young girl. She said, and she told her what I had just said. So she said that we would denigrate the children. We would tell them, we would say all these things so they wouldn't take them, so they wouldn't abuse them. Yeah. So she actually literally had lived experience of her grandmother who had been enslaved that actually confirmed that. Even though I'd read it in Slave Narrative, she actually confirmed it. And that's why she wanted to call in, because she remembered. So
Oh my gosh.
when we look at this hierarchy, and y'all, if you got paper, take it out. Okay,
Yeah,
because
give
it's
him
the
a second.
easiest.
Give him a second. I highly encourage you to do this, especially
I'm
being,
a visual person, so
yeah.
I tend to see things, learn a lot, visually. I have to conceptualize things,
It's
and
just, Sister Joy, before you go on, I want to make sure everybody gets a second. Get a pen and
okay,
paper, because
okay,
this will help you understand what you're experiencing in corporate spaces. And the only thing I'm gonna say in preface is, who are the first group of people when we hear diversity actually gets the benefit of it, right? I'm plant that. All right, Sister Joy, go ahead.
all right. So if you have a sheet of paper, at the top of the sheet of paper, I want you to put a box. Just create a little rectangular box, and in there you're going to put white men. This is going to look like a diamond after a while. So you want an arrow leading from the white men to another box. Think of it like, you're actually making a diamond, and there's another box, and in that box is white women. And between white men and white women, you want to write the word sexism, because white women feel sexism from white men. Okay. Now, on the other side of the white men box is another arrow creating the other side of the diamond, and there's a box. And in that box are men of color. Okay. And the box leading, now we're going to go from the box leading from the black and men of color and black men. You're going to lead down. This is going to be another box at the bottom, right beneath, beneath the white man, all the way at the bottom, are women of color. Okay. So between women of color and men of color, women of color often feel sexism or oppression from men of color. And from white women, let's go back to the white women box, white women towards women of color, you will find between them both, this sense of racism and, basically Karen is who you got here. So you have racism from the white woman. Drawing from the white man down to the box of the women of color, you feel racism. You have racism and sexism. So women of color are at the bottom. When you start looking at the disparities, that breaks down to the one group within women of color with the greatest disparity, the greatest harm, the greatest stress are Black women. So there's an arrow leading from that box down one to another box, which is Black women. And then Black women have the responsibility, box under them, to nurture, raise, train children. And that is the cycle.
Mm.
That is the cycle. And what happens is that Black women become the oppressed of the oppressed, carrying all of the burden.
Look,
And when you start looking at health disparities, it bears out.
Yeah, look, so I was going to venture into health disparities, because I know you blew the lid off, and look, the work around medical apartheid, which you brought to my radar through your lectures, is devastating to read, right? But it's not out of the realm of possible when you think about how much agreement had to be there within this construct in order for it to make it work. Right?
Exactly. And it's important to know, and this is why, it doesn't matter, anyone who's on, whatever your discipline is, whatever lane you're in your life or in your work, in your profession, if you are in America, you have to know that every major institution in America has at its root white supremacy. That's not my opinion. That's the truth. I don't care if you're an architect. I don't care if you're a teacher, a doctor, an attorney. It doesn't matter what you choose. At the bottom of that it is being held up by white supremacy, which is why, again, everybody, people started clutching the pearls when, the Capitol uprising happened. Like, oh my God, this is not America. All of this, I go, yes, it is.
This is very much America.
When hasn't it been America? And again, because again, they're not paying attention to what we've been saying and what we've been experiencing. And
That's right.
I think we do ourselves a disservice when we begin to believe. I told you I ran into some 30-somethings that had, Harvard MBAs that, were telling me that, oh no, I've they have really good friends, and they don't really need to kind of create this, because what we were doing is trying to mentor them. We're looking at older Black professionals trying to mentor young Black professionals, but they were saying, well, no, I got an MBA from Harvard, and Karen is my really good friend, and she's got a really a good corporate job. So I don't really need to do all of this kind of networking that you're talking about. And I said, oh, okay. Let me know how that works out for you. Right. And it was almost a year to the day. They were saying, Dr. Joy, can we talk to you? Can we talk? I said, sure, I can talk to you. They said, well, that job didn't come through. Karen didn't send my resume on.
Right.
And I didn't get in. And now I got a mortgage because, I was leveraging everything on these networkings with Karen and everybody else. And it didn't come through. I said, oh, so let me just tell you what happened. You found out you were Black in America.
Ooh.
That's what just happened. You found out you were Black in America. And I tried to tell you were Black in America. But you didn't, you just felt like, your MBA from Harvard was going to somehow erase all that. But again, that's something that, let me tell you, we got some work to do with some of that crew. But the point is that that those structures that that's why I say to people, if you see the man, stay with me. I want you all to hear me when I say this. You see the man with his knee on the neck of George Floyd. And you remember Chief Justice Taney, who said that a Black man has no rights that a white man is bound to respect. He said it then. No rights. Ferguson. And that's what you saw. Now let's just stretch a little further. Do you think that man who felt like Black people had no rights that white people are bound to respect, you don't think they wear doctors, jackets and judges' robes and or teachers in preschool and kindergarten and high school? You think they're not the ones that you've contracted with to build your house stay with me. Because you see, that is the thing. We begin, and I'm not asking people, let me just say, I don't want you to be paranoid and freak out. I trust people to the extent of what you show me. I'm going to give you a chance. I'm going to give you a chance. But I have a whole lot of reason to be reticent at throwing my arms open.
I mean, history is the best definer.
And I'm saying, just pay attention, because, we're being harmed. Our children are being harmed because we're naive. We somehow believe. You saw all those people at the Capitol. You don't think that they weren't teachers and dentists and you don't think bank tellers and the person that you're going to get your medicine from, or you understand what I'm saying?
For sure.
So again, I think we can trust in God but tie your camel.
Ooh, bars. Look, dropping jewels up here. So look, we're about 8 minutes out from the top of the hour. I know that there are people dying to come and talk to you. So let me just do a quick refresh of the room for those who are joining us for the first time in Plantation Theory. Welcome. We have the honor and the pleasure this evening of hearing from one of our great luminaries, national treasures, international treasures, Dr. Joy Degruy, author of Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. And, we're digging in deep, right? So, of course, we hope that you have the book. If not, please, I've pinned the link to her website at the top of the room. If you are not a member of the club thus far, please go ahead and click on the greenhouse to ensure that you know what we have coming up. And we're digging in deep this evening. So what I want to do at this point, Dr. Joy, because I want to give the opportunity for people not only to give you your flowers, but also to probe your your deep intellect and wisdom in this work that you've done to really uncover and unveil, peel back the layers of the onion, as it were, to the white insecurity that's at the underpinnings of this, of this construct. You said white supremacy. I often suggest in plantation theory, we call it white insecurity, which, you and I have discussed, and I've shared with you this formula of insecurity plus fragility equals rage.
Yes.
Right. And so white insecurity, supremacy is the lie that's being upheld, but insecurity is the underpinning root cause of this of said lie. With that stated, I'm going to open up. If you're ready, I'm going to open up.
Absolutely.
To the floor. All right, here we go. So, hand raising is now turned on. Anybody who would like to come to stage, feel free to. That was a dumb question, because there's a lot of people who would like to come to stage. I will bring everybody up. Certainly, go ahead and go popcorn style until it does no longer serves us. But Mo, you were first up. The floor is yours, my brother.
Thank you very much for the stage, John. And Dr. Joy, pleasure to meet you. Thank you for spending time with us this afternoon, evening, or whatever time it may be. So I do quite a bit of, been in the States 21 years, do quite a bit of business both in the US here and in Africa. How would you say the healing about the stress, post-traumatic stress that's been put on to the people here can be healed by connecting them back to their roots in Africa, perhaps?
Oh my goodness, that's like if I could have even gave you that question to ask me, it's a perfect question, and I feel so strongly about it, really, really strongly about it. I think that in the same way that people have been divorced from the truth here in this country, we are beginning to, and I'm really happy to report, at least in my work, in my international work, we are mending that broken connection that we have had with Africa in general, and very specifically, I know that in Ghana there is just a real attempt to do that reach. I wanted to. And this is going to, part of the way I actually teach, I teach using a very strong African tradition. It's called symbolic imagery and rhythm. And that is the work of Dr. Edwin Nichols, whom you must have on as well. Ed Nichols is amazing. He's my mentor. And he basically studied and looked at the manner in which we connect. And I'm going to answer that question with a story. Okay. And storytelling is a part of that epistemology, how we know a thing. So many people know, or some people know me, that my first trip to Africa was in 1994 on the heels of the inauguration of Nelson Mandela. And I was quite a bit younger than I am now, very emotional. Not that ever changed, but it was the first time in my life I was going to be on African soil. And I remember the first thing that I experienced was normalcy around my Blackness. Now, I'm not suggesting in any way that Africa is nirvana. Africa is struggling and Africa is suffering, and we need each other. But when I got to Africa in 1994, I experienced a healing of normalcy around my Blackness, because I was not odd. I did not have to be or act or feel some kind of way, because everywhere I looked was Black. And it was a normalcy that first happened. Now, that's before anything that occurred. The next thing that happened to me when I was there was, you grow up, if we were together in a room, if all of us were together in a room right now, and I were to say, pick two people, because I don't know you, but I picked two brothers. And I say, look, can you all come into the front of the room and greet each other? Just greet. I don't know if you know each other or not, but greet how you would greet. Now, everybody on, I want you to imagine what you'd be seeing, right? You'd be seeing some sort of gesture, fist, hug, something gonna happen to establish the relationship, because the highest value in African and African American culture is relationship. That's the highest value. And of course, that was what has been under assault for all these hundreds of years. But what happened to me when I got to Africa, and I couldn't speak the languages. I always go to the villages. So I'm in the villages and I can't speak the language because we have a translator with us. And they would be greeting us and we'd be greeting them. But when they would greet us with a common phrase, regardless of the tribal language. It would always translate into, I see you. I see you. Okay. So I was blown away by that. I was always moved and touched. And we were in about 5 different countries in the southern region: Botswana, Botswana, Namibia. We were all over, and we were there for 6 weeks. And I remember that notion. I want you to remember what I just said. I see you, which, by the way, they took and basically planted in Avatar, because the blue people were black people. I'm just saying. And they actually lifted that tradition from Africa by saying, I see you, right? Now, I want you to remember this, because, brother, I'm getting ready to answer your question, because when I got there, I was very emotional. So I would just break down and cry. I had never felt that level of connection. I see you, just that whole idea. And I want you to think about this, John, in terms of the marginalization and invisibility of blackness, right? In the workplace, right? That structure that always somehow you aren't seen. And then you have a perfect stranger saying, I see you. Okay. So I was moved and I cried, right? I would cry. And the thing is that when you cry in the southern region of Africa, I don't know about everywhere else. I've been to about 7 countries in Africa, but I know in the southern region, when you cry, they just start singing. The people would circle around you and just sing until you stop crying. Nobody gives you a tissue, none of that. They just sing. And I was traveling with 8 other African American women. And the 8 other African American women, they were so tired of me, because there's a little problem that after they sing, they ask you to offer a few tunes as well. Contrary to popular opinion, we can't all sing. So the women, luckily, there were a few women in my crew that could sing, but they were getting tired of singing. So we're on our way to Lesotho. Now I'm gonna bring this all the way back home. I promise you. We're on our way to Lesotho. My sister is among the women, and they tell my sister, you need to go talk to Joy. So my sister is sitting next to me when I wake up. And she goes, Joy, we're going to Lesotho today. I said, yeah, I know. She goes, we're not singing in Lesotho. So whatever you need to do, Joy, to get your little self together, you need to get yourself together, because we're not singing in Lesotho. I'm like, wait a minute, you're talking to me crazy. So we get to Lesotho, and we're in this huge auditorium, about 600-700 people in the auditorium. We're on the dais, on the stage, and you got people from every walk of life. You got people from universities, from the government, from villages, everybody. So I get up. I'm the first one to introduce myself. And then the translator is going to translate. So I got up. I said, hello, my name is Joy. I'm traveling with 8 other African-American women. We're here to build a corridor with our African sisters so that we can learn from you, and perhaps you can learn from us. No tears. Everything's good. I sit there. He starts translating it, right? But then he starts going on and on and on. And then the people start yelling something. Then they start clapping and stomping their feet. So I'm looking at the guy. I go, what did you say? He said, well, I told him what you said. I said, I didn't say all that. I know I didn't say all that. He says, no, when I got to the part where I said you were African American, some of the people here are from very remote villages, and they thought all Americans were white. And then I had to explain to them that you were the descendants of the ones that had been stolen away. And they were saying to you, welcome home, welcome home. And of course, everybody's singing. My sister's looking at me like, she did it again. How did she do it again? Everybody's on their feet. We're talking about 600-700 people on their feet, and they are singing. And I'm crying. And in the middle of the room is this Black woman. She's coming, making her way down. Matter of fact, I think she went to SC. It was either UCLA or SC. I'm almost certain it was SC. She graduated from SC, went back. She grabbed me by the hand Everybody's standing and singing. And she says, did you think we would forget you? She says, I am from Lesotho. Lesotho is my home. If I leave Lesotho, Lesotho is still my home. If I leave Lesotho for 50 years, Lesotho is still my home. We mourned Malcolm and we mourned Martin with you. We are so very proud of you. You are African, 300 years from home. We just wondered when you were coming back. And it so changed me. I just need you to know that so changed me that when I got back home, I fell into a bit of a depression. So much so that the women on the trip started calling saying, has she gone outside yet? How's she doing? And the day that I went outside, here is why I went outside. I went outside because, someone ran in and said, there's a boy outside. He's going to beat up Nadim. That's my son. And he's going to pee on the car. These are true words. He going to beat up Nadim, my son, and he going to pee on the car. So I had to go outside, So I go outside and who's standing there? A little group of 10-year-old. There ain't nobody over 10-year-old. Standing a little crowd. My son is in the little circle of them. So I look over to the little ringleader. He's a little stout, tough looking boy. I said, tell me something. Has my son done something I need to know about? He said, yeah, I want to know what he's staring at. I said, what? He said, I want to know what he's staring at, what he looking at. I said, wait a minute. You want to beat up my son because he was looking at you? He could have been looking at you because he thought you maybe want to play a little one-on-one. We got a little hoop out here. He could have been looking at you. Look down the street. There's a park. Maybe he thought you want to go to the park. He could have been looking at you because you thought you maybe want to play a little video game, right? So all little kids are looking at me like, whoa, lady, because, I got a little therapeutic on them. So then what happens is I tell them the spiel about how we need to keep each other safe and the gunshots and all the things that we can't fight each other. And that's when it was born in me. Africa said, I see you. African American said, what? What you looking at? What could have happened to a 10-year-old boy that he could not withstand a gaze? What did the gaze mean? Because you see, he didn't do that to white boys. He did it to black boys because what he saw in them is what he hated in himself. That's why we need Africa. We need to see our wholeness, not our perfection, but our wholeness. And I believe that is so necessary, the naturalness of Blackness. And not that, again, Africa is not without its problems, but that ain't the one that they have. It's not with the Blackness. Although if they keep importing our crazy and the bleaching creams and such, they may be as crazy as us. But right now, brother, what I really believe and what it necessitates is that reach. The reach that says, I never forgot you and that I got your back.
Oh, Sister Joy, Jules, Mo, I appreciate that.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that, John. Thank you for the stage. Appreciate it. Thank you very much, Dr. Joy.
I would kindly ask that once you've asked your question and Dr. Joy's addressed it, please go ahead and jump back in the audience. We've got a lot of folks who want to give flowers and certainly some questions that would like to be. Mo, thank you again. I'll simply, I'll just go in my PTR order just to bring some structure to this. But interestingly enough, two things real quick. Sister Joy, you brought up being seen. And funny enough, I had that question. That's just the universe working again. I had that question about the concept of being seen and how foreign it is. So thank you for tapping into that energy. And then secondly, Avatar was not the first time James Cameron stole from Africa or Africans. Terminator was written by a sister.
Right.
Who also wrote The Matrix, just in case y'all didn't know. So just know when you're watching Terminator or The Matrix, that is a Black woman, Sophia Stewart, the author. Anywho, the Forefront Express. Please, welcome to the stage.
Yes, sir. Good, wonderful evening, everyone. And thank you, Dr. Joy Degruy, for taking the time out of your schedule to join us in this conversation. Oh, and John, what you mentioned was really poignant because think about The Matrix. You have the key terms such as Zion being the place of deliverance and Babylon and Nebuchadnezzar being the ship, but that's another conversation. Um,
Woo.
my question for you, Dr. Joy, is what is, you mentioned earlier about the naivety of some of our people when it comes to relating to our children, the necessity of understanding the world that they live in. My question is, what is I have two actually, but I'll just ask the one for time's sake. What is the relationship between post-traumatic slave syndrome and the passive aggressive racism in this world? Not necessarily the overt that we can readily see, but the passive aggressive racism in the world today. What is the relationship between the two?
Well, I think you hit the nail on it. So I think that it's the passive aggressiveness. When we start looking at, one of the things that I started to try to do in my workshops, there's a lot. I have a class that I teach, a 10-week a graduate level course. I'm teaching it right now. Actually, I had the first class on Tuesday. And people from all over the world are able to take the class. That's the reason why I actually control it, because I wanted it to be open to anybody and everyone. And regardless of your educational background, I just wanted that to happen. And one of the things that will happen to me inevitably, and it's a pretty diverse class. Of course, the majority of people are Black, and then even more, the majority are people of color, and there are always some white people there that are that are really tracking and trying to make things happen, and trying to figure this stuff out, and do the work. And one of the things that always gets asked of me is, what happened to white people? Again, you cannot go through this 300 years of terrorism, and just overt, covert racism, barbarism. Truly, you can't do that and remain unscathed. And while that's not my discipline, that's not my area of study, it's something that I think we have to begin to appreciate. People, you often hear people talk about unconscious racism, right? Or we'll hear systemic racism. We're here, people are not aware. In other words, folks have normalized certain kinds of behaviors and attitudes. Black people have, white people have, everyone has on certain levels. And that shows up sometimes and with this passive aggressive kind of stuff. Because I think about this. Like I said, you create a way to heal yourself. For example, nature will, if you throw toxins at nature, nature will adapt to the toxins. Toxins are no longer lethal to them, right? Everything in nature adapts. And so what happens to a people that have normalized aggression, oppression, privilege, all of these, it becomes part of what people have to do to protect themselves. It's knee jerk, but it's extremely dangerous to those that they are basically inflicting with this behavior. Now, the behavior for them, they can be conscious of it, they can be unconscious of it. But I believe it is a part of their survival through what you've got to recognize as pretty horrific behaviors that they witnessed as well. So let me give you an example of it. And again, I don't know any other way to do this. I remember working with adolescent adult male and female night workers, folks engaged in prostitution. For 5 years, I did that. Working with folks on the street, working with call girls and everybody in between, male and female. And I remember, the program I was working with, the Council for Prostitution Alternatives was the name of it. They were trying to get funds to help get these people, get folks off the street, get them out of the life who were trying to escape the life. And trust me, I'm actually going to get back to that passive aggressive piece. And so we do this thing at a little ritzy place where, again, people are, this is a nonprofit organization essentially begging for money. That's kind of, the game there, dog and pony show. So, we introduce a number of the women and we talk about our success stories and all the things that you're supposed to do to get them to sign a check. And so I'm coming into the lobby And there are all of this tables, and they're getting people's names and signing them in. And these are the women. These are all white women. They're extremely wealthy. They have diamonds so big that they can't stand up on their hand, and there are jewels everywhere, and they're just thrilled to death. And they see me, and then when I walk up, and they said, "We think it's just so wonderful what you're doing with these poor women. It is just really, and I'm trying to bite my tongue, right? Because it's not my organization. It's the organization I'm doing work for, but I'm not trying to create a problem." They say, and it's just so terrible that these women, make these choices, right? And that's what just when it hit me. I said, choices? I said, this is truly a supply and demand situation. I said, because it's really people like your husbands that keep this business going, right? I said, because the average trick is a middle-aged white man married with children, right? I said, that's who the trick is. I said, so when we start looking at how this happened and where it started and these choices started a long time ago in the dark. And we like to believe that it's some sort of a little victimless crime. And, these women are turning the color of ripened fruit at this point. But I'm done. I'm done. So now let's fast forward this notion, because you see what people do, just like the little girl that's on the plantation that plays with the little enslaved girl on the plantation. It's her little friend. They play every day. And one day she finds she's been called to supper, and all the women of the house are gathered together, and they're pulling all the food together. And of course, the enslaved African cooks and women in the house are putting bowls of food in front of everyone as they stand back silently and watch. And the little girl looks around and notices that her dad's not at the table. So she goes into the study, and he's not in the study. And then she goes into the parlor, and he's not in the parlor. And then she sees a light coming from, the barn. And so she goes outside and she looks in the barn, and she sees her father with her little 8-year-old friend. And he screams at her in some way, and she runs back to the house. Now she's trembling, and she's at the table, but she can't quite eat, because you see all the ladies sitting around the table know where Daddy is. And when Daddy comes in, she rushes upstairs, crying, goes to her room, and he goes up to her room, and he just strokes her hair, and he says to her, "They're not like us, sweetie." And he wraps her in racism. He embraces her in racism. And her choices to accept Daddy or to dehumanize her little friend, those are her choices. And so she chooses her survival. And these are all secrets, because everybody says pass the potatoes, but they know where Daddy is. And so what I'm saying is that when we see the insidiousness of this passive aggressiveness, I'm not sure that this is not part of the epigenetic defense mechanisms to try to survive, although now it's cracking at the seams, all of the ugly. But the thing that we have to most be aware of is that we cannot internalize that, and we need to call it out when we see it. That's what we have to do, and we have to teach our children to do, to say, I'm curious about why you're doing this. We don't have to, you don't have to take the earrings off, but we most certainly have to call it out. And that's how we interrupt it. We cannot begin, in other words, I'm not going to engage in the secret with you by pretending you didn't just do what you did or say what you said. That's what we have to do. But we need to know that just along with all the other adaptive, sick, twisted behaviors that came from that time, it shows up, and we're supposed to ignore it and pretend we didn't see it. I'm gonna tell you, the emperor's naked. That's just who I am.
And see, Dr. Joy, what you just touched on, that defense mechanism against insecurities being exposed, and in a corporate
Absolutely.
in a corporate environment.
Pardon me. Whoa.
To call naked, that's a liability. To point out their nudity, their insecurities, that's a liability. So I appreciate you bringing that up, and it was a great question, Forefront.
You also mentioned earlier about appropriate adaptation. Would you liken it similar to during the Greco-Roman Empire when they forced their way into Northeast Africa, Jerusalem, Egypt, to that Hellenization that our ancestors had to suffer from and the assimilation here in America? Would you say
So,
that's kind of similar?
for,
Absolutely.
pardon the interruption. I appreciate you, brother. I'm gonna keep moving because we got a lot of folks. But thank you so much for that original question.
Yes, I do. It is, and again,
Hmm.
it's not always been pretty, but you do what you have to do. The issue has to be reached when we say, when did it lose its utility? When did it not begin to work against us? That's where my work comes in and say, okay, that was real. I ain't mad at them, but we can't do that anymore. We got to stop those behaviors. They had utility and they had a necessity, and it was part of our agency during that time until it isn't. And that's what we have to be careful of. It's sometimes, we begin to take on things that our families say and do, because Big Mama did it. It was good enough for Big Mama, it's good enough for me, not necessarily.
Coded behavior. Yeah.
Yes.
Just running the operating system on an outdated software, right? Yes, indeed.
Well
D.
put.
Yes, indeed. D, thank you for coming to the stage. What's on your mind?
Thank you. Thank you so much, John. And thank you so much, Dr. Joy. Oh my goodness, I don't know where to really begin, but I want to send flowers to you and just thank you for your time in developing this masterpiece, post-traumatic slave syndrome. I'm a professor here at community college here in North Carolina, and I also teach 7th grade English, social studies, economics. And I have introduced my book to both settings, both class settings, and both settings are very unique. Of course, children conceptualize your work totally different than adults, and but both, just like you said, the children have to be introduced to this work. It is necessary for real Black love, self-love. And I love how you kind of lay that out in your book to really focus on what Black unity looks like on a global level. I really appreciate your also your recognition of Black Indigenous Americans and how that unity is dangerous to white oppressors. So I just want to send you your flowers. Thank you so much. I wanted to get into just basically, well, my first question, first of all, I want to put myself first, is about this class because I'm also in my master's program here at East Carolina University, and I would love to pick up that class and tag it along to my my program and what I'm gaining. I'm gaining my MAED in adult education. I would love to get more information on that one. My next question is like, what would you recommend? I've partnered your book with another book from Here to Equality, which we play. I actually play a book club in activists taking action of your book. And there's no audio of your book. Actually, I kind of have to convert it into from a PDF, edit it, convert it, and then play audio through another app. But no, it's okay. It's worth it. Your work is as a masterpiece. I want to know, like, what would you recommend as we deconstruct your book for the youth and for adults? Is very hard, especially being Black in America, to get through this and just get through the realities that you lay out so gracefully. And how would you also recommend me getting through this in the work field? It's really interesting and unique. Administration will say, oh, CRT, but when we get to the real truth of that theory, it becomes something that's unattractive. And I would like your advice on to just how to navigate through all of that, and also if that class would be an option for me.
Okay, so you had about 3 or 4 questions. I
love the way she maximized her time.
She maximized her time. She did maximize her time. First of all, if you're talking about my course, the one I teach, I think you are. You can just go to my website, and there's 2 courses. One is the general course, which is a 10-week, at the end of which I talk about my evidence-based models that I use in community and in schools. The other is my study guide. I don't know if you have the study guide, because the study guide really helps you navigate the book. I really take the book, break it up, and create questions. Some for whole group questions, others where it's more internal. It's one where anyone can use it, actually. Actually, anyone can use them, because it really is beginning to question how you come to perceive yourself the way you do. Why, where it came from, and whether it's something you are going to hold on to, whether you're going to tweak it or you're going to get rid of it altogether. And this is, again, creating this not swallowing whole everything, saying, okay, for example, what do you call yourself? You call yourself Black, African American, colored, a Negro, a nigger. What do you call yourself, and why, and who taught you that, and who you think taught them, and is this something you want to pass on to another generation? So what the study guide does is operationalize it, right? It helps you see some of the questions we need to start asking ourselves about how we move through the world. And some of those things are really great and wonderful, we should hold on to. And some of those things we should not. But it becomes part of the self-introspective experience that allows people to be able to navigate it in a way that they can now apply it. Part 2, the other class that we teach is implementation. So this is when people have had the class, the 10 weeks, and are now wanting to implement the strategies and the model in their community, in their environment, in their work. It starts with, of course, the problem analysis, naming the problem, understanding it, and recognizing how to basically get to the root cause. I can actually share with you, and I would actually also put you in touch with, if you go to my website, and it will say contact Dr. Joy, and I can kind of give you some of the specifics of how we are navigating systems. It's not something that I could do here because it's lengthy, but talking about how do you apply what we've learned, and that's part of the course. People will ask me, Dr. Joy, can I have your model? I say, no, you cannot have my model, because this is not one of those checklists of things that you think you can do. This is heart work, HEART, heart work. So it's not purely cerebral. While I cross the T's and dot the I's, make certain that it's something you can evaluate, surely count and measure, no problem there. However, you need something more. You need to know how to be with people that look like me and not harm them with all of your good intentions, one way or another. So I have to be certain. That's why they don't even get the model till the end of the 10 weeks, because you need to understand the true nature of the injury before you get the model. And then once you get the model, then we start looking at how are you going to use this model in your environment. And that's the 5-week class where we help people actually implement the model in their spaces. But it's not a quick thing. It's not, and again, people often, especially white people, who say, God, I really want to help. I really want to, can I get your model? No, what makes you think you can use my model? What makes you think you can, why do you think And so again, that's me safeguarding really the most vulnerable people of all. And those are the folks that you're working with, that I'm working with, that we don't want to further harm, which means that we need to know the instruments, and we need to know how to use them appropriately. So I would say, reach out to me there, and I can kind of give you a better sense of that.
Hey, my friend, you have just listened to The Forefront Radio. Please leave your comment and input about the show, what you like about the show, as well as any general feedback on ways to improve. We need your help to acquire new equipment to implement studio quality video and audio to our friends. Contribute as little as $4.99. It's only worth a cup of coffee. Then we can produce documentaries, more episodes, and great info for the diaspora. Go to Cash App and enter APHIELLEVI to donate to the Forefront Radio to cover our advertising costs and reach more people. Catch our next episode on YouTube, Facebook, Spotify, anchor.fm/the forefront. Always remember, the truth shall liberate the mind. Peace to the heirs of promise and the heritage of the scattered 12 tribes. Hey, my friend, you have just listened to The Forefront Radio. Please leave your comment and input about the show, what you like about the show, as well as any general feedback on ways to improve. We need your help to acquire new equipment to implement studio quality video and audio to our friends. Contribute as little as $4.99. It's only worth a cup of coffee. Then we can produce documentaries, more episodes, and great info for the Diaspora. Go to Cash App and enter APHIELLEVI to donate to the Forefront Radio to cover our advertising costs and reach more people. Catch our next episode on YouTube, Facebook, Spotify, anchor.fm/the forefront. Always remember, the truth shall liberate the mind. Peace to the heirs of promise and the heritage of the scattered 12 tribes.